over the disease that is running rampant. Father God, we ask for your covering. We ask for your protection. Father, we ask for your healing. We ask that you will just continue to shelter us in this time of storm, that we may be able to move past this season, Father. But also ask that you will open the hearts of our world, Father, that we may hear from you right now, God, and understand the message that is being sent to us through this disaster, and not only just this one, Father, but we pray for the swarm of locusts in Africa, Father God. We pray for all of the other diseases that are spawning out of control, Father God, across this world. Father, we ask that you'll just give us the necessary common sense to not put ourselves in harm's way, but also give us the necessary faith to not neglect the things that you would have us to do, but that in all things we'll practice safety, and that you just keep us free from all hurt, harm, and danger. We love you. We ask you to forgive us of our sins. We thank you so much for Jesus and all the blessings of life, Father God. We ask that you'll just continue to be with this community of the Gulf Coast, be with all of those that have been infected, and that has continued to struggle for clarity and also for healing. Father, we pray for all of our elderly saints here, that you will continue to be with our elder saints, that you will just bless them, keep them from all sickness and all disease. Father, we ask that you will be with our children as they are out of school, that they will be able to still gain lessons from educational resources and things that the school system has sent home. Father, we pray for all of our healthcare workers, those who cannot be contained right now at home. We ask that you will just cover them with your love, and place a hedge of protection around them. Limit their exposure, oh God, that they will not bring it back to their families, and that also will not be contaminated as well. Father, we just thank you so much for hearing our prayer. We ask you to open up our hearts tonight to understand your perfect will and your ever perfect way, that we may be able to leave out of this place knowing more about you and your will for our lives. We just thank you so much for Jesus. Thank you for the life that he gave on Calvary so that we might live. We love you. We trust you. We trust in your power to save. We magnify your holy name. That's why we worship you for who you are. It's in Jesus' holy, righteous, everlasting, and precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a infestation of locusts swarming crops in Africa right now. That's possibly going to cause a famine because they're eating all the crops. A locust can eat its body weight of food, and so there are thousands. You can look up the reports, but
I've seen persecution, but I don't have that.
What part of the Bible is talking about?
It's all throughout the Old Testament, But we got a call earlier from a gentleman that was asking a question. That he had a question on confrontation discussion with a guy at work today about Second Chronicles, where it talks about if my people will humble themselves and turn from their wicked ways, then I will cause these things to cease, and I will basically restore the land. And it's talking about how certain. I think somebody sent me that earlier. Did you send me that post? You posted it in the group, or you sent it to me? Okay. And I saw it a few days ago, which he wanted to know if that had anything to do with us today. And in the context of the passage, is dealing with the children of Israel, how they were so disobedient toward God, but they were God's chosen people. So I believe there is a lesson in there for us today to understand that we have done some of the same things that Israel has done. We are a godless culture. And God's people, we operate under the terms that the world has created, instead of us operating under the auspices of God and continuing to live as God has commanded us. We have begun to really lose our voice in the world, and I believe God is pushing us, pushing the brakes and saying, I want you all to turn back to me. It's only gonna get worse before it gets better. Just think about how we idolize entertainers and sports and all these things like that. Those are to a lot of people, they're pagan gods. You know, on Sundays we have more folk that will go worship those icons and those teams and neglect their worship to God. You know, even people ask me questions like, "How do you out at every Saints game this year?" And but first this is what they do. They see me at the games, why? Because I post, I go live, and then they go back to the church page and they want to see if I was in worship, and then they trying to figure out, well, how'd you was just over there, now you. But the concept is, I'm not going to worship them in replacement of me worshiping God. Does that make sense? So I put God first. I came to worship. As soon as I left, worship was done. I get on the road. I go to the game, get there for halftime. I catch the second half of the game, right? Because my priorities are in order. And I know some folk who missed worship, right? And went to the game. And it made me think, like, what is it that we really prioritize? Now, that's my decision to do that. But that should be our decision because of who we are. You know, we talked about discipleship last semester, toward the end of 2019, and we talked about how we are called to be disciples, and there's something different. That's why we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Do we have an option whether we observe the public or the corporate worship over the individual private worship? Can we pick and choose which of the two we want to observe? Or do we have a choice? And I believe that too many of us have gotten comfortable thinking that we have a choice. Oh, well, as long as I worship, it doesn't matter if I'm in the sanctuary. It doesn't matter if I'm in the corporate worship setting. I have a personal relationship with God, or I don't need the church to have a relationship with God. I hear people say that all the time. I don't have to go to church, right? But I believe that there is precedence that we understand and contextual teachings that we need to understand, that we are required to worship in the private setting, also in the public setting, in the corporate setting, and in the individual setting. Now, what does that look like? Now, a lot of churches and a lot of preachers and a lot of teachers, a lot of evangelists, a lot of pastors will say, well, Hebrews 10:25 says, not forsaking the assembly of ourselves together. We beat that till it's blue in the face, right? We beat that horse in the ground, then try to revive it and beat it down again. The context of Hebrews 10:25 is not telling you that you can't miss a Sunday in worship, right? Not forsaking the assembly. The Hebrew writers were trying to encourage the Jewish Christians that were turning back to Judaism and turning back into their previous beliefs, and they were forsaking Christianity altogether. The forsaking of the assembly is talking about us forsaking being who we were called to be. And I believe that there are a lot of saints that sit in the sanctuary every Sunday but have been forsaking the assembly because our lives have not been patterned or setting a pattern of what it takes for us to be a New Testament Christian. Does that make sense? And so even what we are experiencing right now, I believe that there's going to be some challenges ahead because this thing I do believe is going to get worse before it gets better. I do believe a lot of people are going to be infected with this disease. It is a virus. Viruses run rampant. That's what they do, right? I also believe that there may be some of us who get the disease, right? Because it's a virus. There's nothing you can do to prevent it. There is nothing that you can do to get cured from it. It's like a common cold. You get a cold, you just gotta wait that thing out. You try to make sure your immune system has been prepped to handle the sickness, right? But just like the flu, you take the precautionary measures. You wash your hands. You do all those things. You limit touching your face, and then you pray. At some point we gotta trust God. And let's not be stupid, right? Let's not be unwise, but let's not be fearful to live our lives either. Because if we've been walking with God, we've been being what God has called us to be, then there's no reason for us to live in fear. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Going back into what we've been talking about, Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12, we have been studying this for the past few weeks. What color do y'all want? We've been baby blue. You would pick the worst color up here. That's kind of dark. Okay.
Green. You ain't gonna see it green.
Yeah, the green is pretty cool. Let's do green. Romans chapter 12. We've been dealing with Romans chapter 12 and talking to. This one's leaking.
I'll go with it.
Oh yeah. Okay. But Romans 12, we've been dealing with becoming a living sacrifice. Becoming a living sacrifice. We are called to worship because we are worship. I said this on last week that we don't go to worship. We don't practice worship. We don't perform worship because we are worship. We are people of God that have presented something to God. And I'm actually contemplating in my spirit on talking about this on Sunday just a little bit, because I believe where we are now as a people of God, we got to worship our way through this. We got to praise our way through this. God needs to see his people trust him. God needs to see us come back to him in ways that we have abandoned him, forsaken him, left him, whatever you want to call it. God needs to see his people still have an effect in this world. You remember when Sodom and Gomorrah was getting ready to be destroyed? Lot went to God. Lot prayed that, God, if I can just find a few righteous souls, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I think it was, I don't remember. It was, maybe 10. If I can find 10 righteous souls, will you spare it? So God said, yes, I'll spare it. He couldn't find it. He went back to God and said, okay, God, if I can find 3, will you spare it? No, I can't find it. He said, well, Lord, if I find just one righteous soul, will you spare it? And he couldn't find it. And so God told him and his wife and his children to get out and don't look back. Y'all remember the story. I may actually, do a sermon on this, because it's something that I think we need to remember right now. And we can either build an altar, or we can be a monument. We can build a monument. Okay? Right now, God's people have a choice. Matter of fact, I think I want to preach this on Sunday. We have a choice of what we want to be. Or we have a choice of what we want to build. In regards to how we handle life's challenges and life's struggles. But Romans 12 verse 1 says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. But be ye not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your minds. So, last week we dealt with presenting our bodies a living sacrifice. Now, if I'm to present something to God, then that means I must be willing to give it my all. If I'm going to present it, thank you. If I'm going to present it, then I can't be an Indian giver at the same token. Does that make sense? Too many times we're like Indian givers with God. We're like, God, I'm going to give you my life, but I'm only going to give you partial access. I'm going to give you my life, but I'm going to give you partial access to the point to where I want to serve you, but I want to live my life too. Many of us want to live our best life with God when it's convenient for us. Okay? So, understanding that I am to be a living sacrifice, that means God no longer wants things that are dead. Well, what happened? What changed? There was a point where God required animal sacrifices, correct? In the days of old, He required us, mankind, to give those animal sacrifices. And those animal sacrifices were they alive or were they dead? They were dead. God no longer wants dead things because dead things have no salvation in them. So what do you think God feels? How do you think God feels about a dead church? Same thing. You know, he's disappointed. God is looking for us to be a living vessel. Even when you look at the church of Acts, how they moved, how they how they grew so fast, so rapid, is because they were a living sacrifice. They were an organism. Now, when it comes to our worship, let me see. We've talked about being worshiping in private. We've talked about public worship. We've talked about all those different aspects. Why do you think we struggle? And I want to hear from you guys. Why do you think we struggle in regards to the corporate worship setting? You worry about what else other people gonna say? Okay, what else?
Because when I worked in the car dealership, one of the managers, well, he was a manager, he was another car salesman. He used to go out there in the morning and be praying, like standing in the front of the building. Praying, if he get a customer, he come on out there, he be like, "Thank you, God." People be in the inside laughing at us, and him out there doing it again. So,
okay. Okay. Now, is that an example of public worship?
Yeah.
Or is that an example of private worship?
Public.
How so?
Because you're in the vicinity of a bunch of people. You're in that, I don't know what I mean, like, you have other people around you. No, not necessarily, because people stand outside them from the time they do it.
So what you have to say?
I would say it was a little of both, but it is a private sense of worship. It's not like he's standing in the crowd saying, "Thank you, Jesus, for sending me."
Okay. I would lean further towards it being a private worship moment. Because you know when Jesus is teaching his disciples to pray, he says, "And when you pray, go into your prayer closet." Right? He's not saying go into a closet. Right? He's telling us to isolate ourselves from people. Sometimes we can be in public and pray, but we're praying just with ourselves. We're trying to connect to God individually. So although it might be we might be in public, our worship isn't necessarily public. Write this down. I believe that public worship, and you can just write it in your own little synopsis of what I'm about to say, but I believe public worship includes somebody other than myself. In order for it to be public, it has to include somebody else. Even if I'm exhibiting elements of worship in public, a public worship or corporate worship has to include somebody other than myself. Does that make sense? All right. An individual worship or a private worship can be anywhere, but it's between me and God. Okay? It's between me and God. It's between me and God. last week we talked about how our attitudes. I'm trying to remember what's on the slides, right? Our attitude basically determines, or our relationship basically determines how our worship looks, right? Many times, because our relationship is not as strong as it ought to be, our worship isn't as powerful as it can be. If our relationship is not as strong as it should be, our worship will not be as powerful as it can be. If our relationship is not as strong as it should be, our worship is not as powerful as it can be. Meaning we limit God, we limit the ability to connect with God because our relationship with Him is mediocre at best. It's mediocre at best. We're not doing the things that will allow us to allow God to reign free in our lives. Too many times we're looking for function and form and fashion versus forgetting everything else. Now, I will say this, and what you were saying, Kendrick, even if I'm worshiping in a public or corporate setting, meaning with somebody else, my corporate worship ought to resemble my individual worship. What do I mean by that? Can somebody talk to me? Tell me what I mean by that.
We shouldn't try to modify it for you in a public setting.
Okay. You said blue. Say again. You said what? I know. No modification. All right, we ought not to modify our worship. We should not modify our worship. What does that mean, though, Kendrick?
Don't be shy in worship.
Okay.
Like, don't try to. I don't know. I mean, I'm not. But I know what I mean.
Don't worship to satisfy someone else. Keep your worship 100%.
Keep it 100. What does that mean?
Don't try to be
Be who
random.
you are 100%. No matter who you're around.
You know what I like about some people is that they're the same way every time you see them. No matter where you see them, what they're doing, they're gonna always be the same. When I talk to Sister Mitchell, I know what I'm gonna get every single time. When I talk to Red, I know what I'm gonna get every single time. It's gonna be something crazy, right? I just know what I'm gonna get. What I want us to understand as we get closer to God is that the way I worship by myself is the way I need to worship in here. That's what I mean by no modification. That's what I mean by keep it 100. And we're gonna look at a few passages, and then we're going to get out of here for tonight. I want you to first go to Acts chapter 2. Acts chapter 2. Acts chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. Acts 2, 1 and 2. Who wants to read? They were gathered with one accord in one place. So this is where we have to begin to understand, if we want to be like the first century church, if we want to be like the church that Jesus built, that corporate worship is just as important as our private worship. Because when the day of Pentecost, when was the church established? When was the church established? When did Jesus actually bring to fruition what he had prophesied? What was prophesied? When was the church started? On what day? What day was the church started on? Huh? Pentecost. The church was started on Pentecost. Not the Catholic Church. Catholic Church was started 600 years after the church.
Yes.
All right. The Catholic Church was started in 606 AD by Boniface III. All right. That was when Catholicism came. Why did Catholicism even come? So Catholicism is the oldest denomination in the world, because denomination comes from something that was already in existence prior to it, right? Because when we divide, what do? We have a what? We have a numerator and denominator. And the denominator is often taken from what? The who? Let's say the numerator. And all right, so we know that you have to have something. You have to always have an original. You have to always have an original before something can be taken from it to become a denomination of it. All right. So this is good information right here. Denomination. Denomination. You can't see that.
Yeah, the image is going.
All right. Is that better? All right. So denomination. Yeah. In order for us to have a denomination, you have to have an original. Now, my question is, why have a denomination when you have an original?
Because the first wave probably wasn't working, so they decided to do it.
Okay.
That's his point.
Write this word down. In order to have a denomination, you have to do what?
Have a original.
Divide the original.
You know why denominations exist?
Original.
Huh?
Because of the original.
Huh? Because original?
Because of the original.
No, that's how they can come about, because of the original. But the reason that we have denominations today is because of people and division. People and division. What has the devil always tried to do since the beginning of time? Divide mankind. Why has he tried to divide us?
We get watered down. We're weaker with less numbers.
We're weaker. He divides us so that we can be weaker. He divides us so that we don't have the strength that God intended for us to have. We won't be as powerful as the Creator made us. Look at our communities. Why are our communities in such trouble? Because we're not together. We're divided. Why do homes separate? Why do husbands and wives get divorced? Because they cheated? Okay, we can use that. They cheated. What color we got up there?
White.
If somebody cheats, the Bible says, whatsoever God have joined together, let not man put asunder. cheats, they divide. Because watch this, don't miss this. I'm glad you said that, Rick. If somebody cheats, they divide what? What do they separate?
The
whole marriage,
They separate the bond. They separate their commitment. They shared their commitment with somebody else. So how do you think denominations came? Because guess what? Right here you have a home, you have a marriage. That's the original. Then you take that original and somebody cheats on the original, and it ends up dividing the home. And now you end up having, watch this, you end up having extra kids. Y'all see this? You end up having extra kids. What the extra kids? Those are denominations of your cheating. Oh, this is so good. This is what happens when people cheat on the original. I wanted to run, but I can't know where to go. This is what happens when people cheat on the original. You end up with illegitimate kids. Is that right? Is that right or wrong? So how do you think denominations came about? People cheated on the original. Because it's something now. If you ask a man that has been caught cheating, and he's 100% honest, 7-ish out of 10 times, he will initially if he's 100% honest, he's going to say something where I thought that it was going to be better than what the reason the grass is greener on the other side is because it's artificial turf. I saw a meme the other day said all shipments of eyelashes and hair has been postponed to further notice, so we about to finally see what y'all really look like. Okay, we about to see how some folk really look right now. Okay, and what I'm saying is the reason it looks better because it ain't real. So that's what caused it initially, physically, because watch this. When a man cheats, when a man cheats, most of the time it's because what he sees physically. Right? But see, watch this. I'm glad you said that. When he sees how crazy she is, it goes from the physical to the spiritual. Because guess what? When he sees how crazy it is, he sees what kind of spirit she possesses. And then he realizes that it wasn't nothing like when he had at the house. What's happening right now is God is trying to get us back to the original. And I'm not saying this to pick on nobody, but these are all of the illegitimate children. Because people cheated on the original. The reason we have denominations is because the devil has always tried to divide God's people. When you divide God's people, you begin to modify what the original looks like. And if I can begin to compromise my own positions out of loyalty to something that looks better and sounds better and makes me feel better, then I find myself lost and disconnected from God. Because that's why we have a world of worship that's full of emotionalism. It might look better, it might sound better, it might make you act a certain way while you're in the moment. But you see why people are sick, right? I saw another post this week saying all you prophets and all you apostles and all y'all that have been talking about this, y'all didn't prophesy this one. Y'all didn't pray, y'all ain't why are so many people getting sick and you have the power to heal. I'm not coming, I didn't come to pick on nobody. What I am saying is that you cheating on the original. When did this thing happen? When did this shift happen? Well, prophets no longer prophesied things that were of God, but started prophesying over you getting a new house. God never used prophets in the Bible to prophesy over physical things. It was always something that was pointing towards Christ, always something that was going to change the world, not change your bank account, not change your, I prophesy over you and I see that in the next 100 days that your bank account is going to have be running over and you're going to have an abundance of everything. Come on, man. Say it again, say it loud. False prophecy. Tell yeah, exactly. Tell the rest they do it all the time. Why? Because they know, I don't want nothing to stand in the way of this blessing. So guess what? Let me send him some money.
That's why they got jets, final jets, and big mansions.
Y'all want to send me? If y'all want me to have a jet, please buy me one. But I ain't got to con you out of one. You hear what I'm saying? If you want me to fly and not have to risk getting the the virus by being on public airlines and let me fly by myself, y'all go right ahead.
You wasn't right at Range Rover.
So what? A broom with some go-go juice. No, we ain't wrong with that either. All right, you over there to some witchcraft. All right.
I mean, you live something out there.
Find something to do. So, when we cheat on what God has given us, we'll end up with a whole lot of stuff that we didn't intend on having. So the church was established on Pentecost. Everybody say Pentecost. In 33 AD. I'm right here in the center. And that does not mean, AD does not mean after the death of Christ. As much as people think that's what that means. It means Anglo-dominated.
Yeah, I've always asked like my teachers and stuff like that in school. I always ask like the history books. I always ask the teacher, and that's what they say after.
No, it's Anglo-dominant. Anglo-dominant. That has to do with their calendar system. Okay. Huh? A lot of people have. A lot of people have. Now, 33 AD was when was approximate around the time when the Pentecost happened and the church was established. Where was the church established in? If anybody ever asked you to show them where the church came into existence, take them to Acts 2. Acts chapter 2. When the day of Pentecost was fully come. When the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all where? Together. She said, no phone. They were all together in one accord. They were all together in one accord and in one place. So, I don't care who tells me this or what happens between now and Judgment Day, I'm going to always believe that a child of God should worship on Sunday morning. Or on Sunday. It don't have to be on Sunday morning, but if this week, I know we go to Acts 20 verse 7, upon the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, Paul preached unto them, ready to depart tomorrow, continue his speech until midnight. That's Acts 20 and 7, if you want to read that. I understand we always go there. right? Because every week has a what? First day. Huh? Yes. So Sunday is the first day. So that's why I believe that we are always going to.
Oh, Sunday was the last day. Ain't this the day?
It's the seven days. Saturday is considered the seventh day.
So it wasn't Sunday when he was freestyle, or whatever he was done.
No, it's the Sabbath. Saturday. It's the seventh day. Saturday.
I don't know why I thought it was always Sunday.
So he rested. He rested on the seventh day. He rested on the seventh day. And y'all want to hear something? Y'all want to hear something that's very profound? God did not cease to rest. God did not cease his rest. The Bible says he rested on the seventh day. And he created the world in 6 days, and on the seventh day he what? Rested. When did God stop resting? Yeah, he did. We didn't hear nothing else from God after he created man. God broke his rest when man was disobedient. God broke his rest when man cheated. Y'all remember a few weeks ago I preached about Adam and Eve and how they sewed fig leaves together, and then God visited them in the garden in the cool of the day, and he ended up having to cover them with animal skins. That was something that it wasn't initially in God's plan. God decided to rest. Our sin brought him out of his rest. So when we sin, we are making God restless. That's why he's trying to bring us back to his, watch this, come unto me, all ye that are labored and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. God understands that sin troubles his children, and as long as we are in sin, God is troubled. As long as we are in sin, God is not at rest. That's why he wants us to be in Christ Jesus, because when we're in Christ Jesus, there is rest. He no longer has to worry about whether we're going to come home. So if we have a God that rests when we come home, why won't we worship him in appreciation for him giving us rest? Adam and Eve was hiding from God until God came out of rest and covered them. Once they were covered, they were back in relationship with God. Y'all see how that works? Once they had owned up to what they had done, God, now they were back in decent communication with God. God blessed them to have children and be fruitful and multiply. Guess what? After Cain killed his brother Abel, God still allowed them to have another child. Right? He said, because this is what happened, I'm going to replace him with such and such. So if we want God to go back into rest with us as people, we got to start coming back to God and owning our mess, quote unquote. We got to start keeping it 100. Does that make sense? And how do we keep it 100? Is by giving ourselves back to him. Romans 12, where we started, verse 1 and 2, presenting our bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God. That's the least we can do, because he's providing us with rest. If he provides us with rest, that's the least we can do, is give ourselves to him. Because outside of him, there is no rest. Outside of him, there's nothing but chaos. Outside of him, there's nothing but disease. Outside of him, there's famine, there's desolation, there's isolation. God is isolating us right now. He's isolating people from their corporate settings if you don't worship him in private settings. It got to start with yourself. Because guess what? He says in verse number 2 of Romans chapter 12, in verse number 2, he says, but be ye not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. How am I going to be renewed in my mind? By spending time by myself. How can I be renewed? How can I change the way I think? How many of you ever made life-changing decisions around a crowd of people? Think about it. The most important decisions you've made in your life, you had to spend some time by yourself in order to make them. Right or wrong? Right. You had to go to a quiet place. And you had to really focus and concentrate in your spirit. You had to spend, if you believe in God, you had to spend some time with God, praying to God. God is taking us from a place of confusion, a place of crowdedness. He's taking us back to a place of isolation so that we can begin to worship in private, so that once this thing finally turns around, like Trump said, it's going to just blow over, right? But once this thing finally gets back to normal, the way we worship now is the way we ought to worship in public. If we spend time in isolation and make it count, then when this thing gets back to normal, and you know what? This may be the new normal. We don't know what's going to happen. Life as we know it might have changed. But it's because for too long we've been cheating on God. And now we got folk that this wasn't even good enough. And they done left that too. And now they just out there on their own. With no kind of principles, with no kind of morals. And the reason this happened was because they weren't satisfied with this. And then it just kept going. Martin Luther, he wasn't satisfied with the Catholic Church. And he said, well, the Catholic Church doing all this stuff that's wrong and goes against the Bible. It goes against what the original was doing. So he decided to nail his 99 Theses to the door to the cathedral in Wittenberg, Germany, and started the Lutheran Church because he had a disagreement with the Catholic Church. Well, the Catholics had a disagreement with the original, and we've just been going further and further down, disagreeing with one another. I don't like the way y'all sing. Okay, let me go start my own. I don't like the way he preached. Let me go start my own. He said something about my grandma. Let me go start my own. They don't like children crying in the church. Let me go start my own. And we have been just being stupid. For centuries. God is saying, wake up, children of God. He's saying, wake up. And the way you worship me now is going to determine my relationship with you. It's going to determine my relationship with you. And I was talking to Sister Mitchell earlier today, and I said, listen, my concern for the church is this, is that a lot of people are going to just use this as an excuse not to worship God. Because we find coming to worship is a chore, not a blessing. I'm not concerned so much as to whether you come to this building, but I am concerned whether or not you worship. Many of our people may decide, well, I can't go, so I'm just not going to worship. Well, we have the means for you to continue worship here. Before you leave, I want you to take communion home with you just in case we can't come. Right? Take it home so that in case we cannot come physically Sunday, we don't know what's going to happen between now and Sunday, then you'll still be able to worship. Y'all follow what I'm saying? We have to be intentional about this thing that we're doing. Not just saying, oh, well, see, that's faithless. Oh, well, we can't worship, so I guess I'll just clean house, or I might read scripture, and that's not what God is looking for from his children right now. He's still looking for us to worship him. It just may not look like we made it to look in our modern culture. He may be calling us to go back to Acts, where the church started. They went house to house. I was thinking about this earlier today. I said, man, think about how the virus spreads. If you touch somebody that's infected, you end up getting the disease. And I saw some statistics that says a person that's infected will probably infect 2 to 3 people. And then those persons infected will infect 2 to 3 people. And it spreads just like that. And it got my sanctified mind thinking, what if the church spread like this? What if the gospel spread like this? What if every one of us contaminated or infected 2 or 3 people with the gospel and then taught them to do the same thing? That's evangelism. That's how we talked about the evangelism circle and the web of evangelism and how it works. God is showing us that it can spread. We're just not spreading it. Does that make sense? The church will only grow if we spread the gospel. The kingdom will only grow if we spread the gospel. We worried about being infected by something that we cannot see. Well, the gospel is something that we didn't see. Something that we don't see the blood of Christ. We don't see how it covers us. But we know that it's there. You don't see this virus, but you know that it's here. Say amen when you can. God is taking us from fear to faith. What is our response going to be? What I implore as children of God is learn how to worship Him in private and bring your private worship into corporate worship. If I'm willing to whatever I do in my private worship, I ought to be doing it. I used to hear people talk about, man, they got this sister, she fall out every Sunday. She fall out every Sunday at the same time, the same way. If she hear a certain song, she gonna fall out. If the preacher do a certain run, she gonna fall out, right? Do you fall out at home like that? They might need to check you out and make sure your sugar not low. Don't just do it in the house of God, in the corporate setting, if you don't do it in the private setting. Does it make sense? God is not looking for the modifications. He's looking for us to keep it 100, keep it real. If I fall out of the house, guess what? I'm going to fall out of the church. But if I ain't doing it at home, don't bring that foolishness up here. Because it's for show. Does that make sense? Time to get back